Hello, listeners. It's Lisa Starr back with another episode of StarrCast. So, this week, you can hear in my voice it's a little rough. I spent last week in Saudi Arabia, kamikaze trip, a week over and back, and I think it took a toll on me. But that part of the world is so interesting. There's so much going on, and I thought it was time to have someone on that I've been hoping to speak with for a long time. So, we're happy to welcome Lindsay Madden-Nadeau to the show this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Lindsay is the Senior Director of Wellness Strategy for Red Sea Global. If you have been in a hole in the wellness world, maybe you haven't heard of Red Sea Global. Otherwise, I'm sure you have. But Lindsay's going to help us unravel what is it and the scale of it, because it's, I have to say, very difficult to sort of comprehend what is going on in Saudi. But Lindsay, you're a long-time wellness uh, industry professional. Could you walk us back to how you got your career started in the wellness industry?
Sure. Well, if we take one step back, my career actually started in luxury hospitality. My first role was actually in food and beverage at a five-diamond hotel in Niagara on the Lake in Canada. And that was where I started my training within the hospitality world. So I started really at the
The
top of
F&B.
luxury.
Okay.
Yep, in food and beverage, the highest diamond status you can get. And that was a very unique experience for me, and one that really made me appreciate where I wanted to be within the hospitality space. I also equally had a love for sports and therapy and all things. At the time, we weren't necessarily calling it wellness, but all things spa. That was back 25 years ago. And so I set off on a journey to be a registered clinical massage therapist back in Canada. And those two worlds just converged. And I ended up, my first role was actually outside of Canada. I interviewed for the second Willow Stream opening, which was the Fairmont Willow Stream Spa.
Uh-huh.
So you'll remember Anne McCall was actually
Yep.
leading the group at the time. And I had some interviews with the team, and they said, can you be here in 10 days? And I said, absolutely. It was winter in Canada, and I picked up my stuff and off I went to
Fun.
Bermuda. So I worked in Bermuda as a therapist. That's where I started within luxury hospitality for almost 6 years. And then it was time to move on. I was already starting to get the itch. And that's when Dubai was just starting to get on the scene.
Mm.
So again, a good 20 years ago, when people were still wondering, what is this place
What
in the
is
Middle East?
Dubai?
What are they
Right.
doing? Yeah. And today it's an iconic, global tourism destination, which is ironic because it's where Saudi Arabia is sitting today. So fast forward through those years, I spent almost 14 years in Dubai through various roles with Fairmont, Raffles, Anantara, which was M Spa, as well as Jumeirah, and then really surpassed my career objectives at about 34 when I was asked by Andrew Gibson to come back and lead the operational strategy for Fairmont Raffles Hotels International. So
Wow.
we did that, and then, as you know, we were acquired about 4 years later by Accor, and then my role switched. By then, Spa and Fitness had really evolved to wellness, and we changed that role to the global director of well-being for the Accor luxury brands. So that included overseeing 6 luxury brands and any joint ventures we had. So Fairmont, Raffles, Orient Express, some of our premium brands like M Gallery and Movenpick. And then, of course, Accor had joint ventures with Banyan Tree, 25 Hours, and the list just kept growing, as did my role. And then I decided, you know what, I think it's time to leave the Middle East. And I wanted to experience something more European. And so I went off and moved to the south of France. And that's where I started
Yes. Why
Meraki.
not?
That's where I started Meraki Bespoke Wellness Strategies. It was always a desire for me to want to do consulting. And I really, what I wanted to do, the intention was to step back from legacy hospitality and to focus on evolving dedicated wellness brands. So working with companies like Shaw or like Clinique La Prairie, or owners or operators that were looking to develop wellness as their core business. Because the challenge that we had with the luxury hospitality brands and I'm sure all your listeners can relate to this, is that although it is a key proposition that every single guest wants, and we understand the value of revenue that comes from it, it's one of the most challenging things to convince the operating hotel of the value of that.
Hmm.
Unless you have a general manager that's very, very apt in that area. Um, and so I think I lost momentum within the hospitality space, and that's why I wanted to kind of go off on my own and focus on these dedicated wellness brands. And about 6 weeks after I moved out there, COVID happened, and so
Wow, what timing.
yeah, I was
I mean,
living
the
in a
south of
country.
France isn't a bad place to be if you're stuck somewhere, but
It wasn't, no, but I didn't speak the language. I didn't have, technically in the French infrastructure of living, I didn't have a
right.
job. I worked for myself, which meant I didn't have a contract, which meant I couldn't get a bank account. I couldn't get this. It's very difficult to integrate into their systems. But anyway, I kind of forged forward, and Meraki Bespoke Wellness Strategies actually brought me to Amala at the time, because originally Red Sea Global was not Red Sea Global. It was two individual GigaProjects. One of them was Amala, which was with a vision to be the most comprehensive health and wellness destination. And one of them was Red Sea Projects, which I thought was one or two projects. It turned out to be almost 21 under one
Oh,
under one umbrella. So we were in conversations, and whilst those conversations were happening, they merged the two GigaProjects, and Red Sea Global was born. And I was consulting for them on Amala, and they said, "Look, we want you here. We want you in Saudi Arabia." And
wow.
I had a network that was already here, and they'd been here for a couple of years. And I'll be honest, I didn't, even living in Dubai for so long, I didn't have an interest in Saudi Arabia. I
Mhm.
had been there on business. I got in and out as quickly as possible, and really didn't give it another thought. And as I started coming out here for almost 3 weeks at a time, and I really hope that you experienced this while you were here as well, you feel the energy and you feel the
Mhm.
vision 2030, and you see the momentum happening, and everything's moving very quickly, and it's aspirational, but it's also very realistic. And I was able to see how much Saudi had changed from 2017 when I had originally visited to 2023 when I returned. And, you know, working with Red Sea Global was something where I thought, look, I can put aside my personal
Right.
aspirations for retiring early in the south of France. I want to be a part of this project. I want to be a part of with these people, with this mindset, with this talent. And so it goes. I picked up my life and I moved it over to Saudi Arabia. So I'm based out of Riyadh now and have been for almost 2 years.
An opportunity, though, to put your personal stamp on something that's, well, just the word Giga project. We didn't have that word before, and now there's several, and they're all in Saudi. I mean, let's talk about what a Giga project is because it helps to explain the scope of what you're doing. I think, and I'll go back to my first visit to Saudi was in December of 23. I went to the WTTC conference, which is all tourism ministers and travel, but hosted by Saudi. They shared their Vision 2030, what they're doing at Neom and Red Sea, and everyone in the audience just sat there with their mouths open. It's like you're building what? You're doing what? Why? So, and then I've come back now. This will be my third time, and you do see the speed at which it changes. The airports are amazing. The people are hospitable. It's everywhere you look are cranes. I was in Jeddah as well. Just
No,
they're
okay,
building
great.
things everywhere. It's unbelievable the pace at which it goes. I guess we've learned from Dubai that things can be done quickly there, and it's continuing. But understanding what is Red Sea Global, right? Let's talk about that. Two giga projects that merged. Is Red Sea Global the sort of the umbrella under which they operate?
That's right. So Red Sea Global is a developer. And just to put a little bit of context beyond Red Sea Global, how did we get to Red Sea Global? So in 2018, Vision 2030 was announced by Saudi Arabia, and that was an initiative kingdom wide to diversify the economy, to move away from the dependence on oil, and to welcome tourism into a country that had been fairly closed for a long time, closed to normal tourism. It was quite challenging to get in. And so in 2018, when they announced Vision 2030, there was about 5 GigaProjects. And just for the context of a GigaProjects, it's usually considered over $10 billion US of investment.
Okay.
These are almost incomprehensible. They are massive cities that are being developed, massive developments, huge investments. And that is where the Red Sea Global that we know today, those 2 GigaProjects fell under there. So we had Alula, which I'm sure, I think you mentioned you had the opportunity to visit, which is just otherworldly. We have Amala, which was, important to understand that each one of these GigaProjects has a very distinct role in the tourism economy and how it plays a role and how each one of them, kind of from a helicopter view, plays with the others. And so Alula was really about art and culture and heritage and how do we bring that to life. And then we have Amala, which was really that to build a global reference point for health and well-being. We have Red Sea Projects, which was all about sun, sea, lifestyle, adventure. And then you have Diriyah Gate, which is another huge development here in Riyadh, a city urban development built on, again, arts, culture, and heritage. So each one of these GigaProjects, when you go through them, they each play a very unique role. And so Red Sea Global has these 2 GigaProjects under them. I mentioned under Red Sea Projects, we had almost 80,000 kilometers of land that was under our mandate to develop, whether they were individual islands or islands of, that's to give a perspective, that's almost the size of Belgium just for a Red Sea project.
That's big.
That's big, yeah. And under the guidance of John Pagano, we have successfully, we've developed and are developing in the process of developing those destinations. And we've already successfully opened our infrastructure. So we've opened Red Sea International. We've opened 5 luxury hotels, including the Ritz-Carlton Reserve, the St. Regis Reserve, Shabara, and Desert Rock, which are 2 of the Red Sea Global hospitality brands. The Six Senses in Southern Dunes, which is at the Red Sea as well. We've got our nursery, we've got our staff villages. So as a developer of these destinations, we have already successfully opened these properties. And in the next 3 to 4 years in total, we'll have almost 30 different hospitality brands at both destinations between phase 1 and phase 2.
I don't understand how you even start to get your mind around the scope of that, like you in your role, Lindsay, when you're plopped on your desk, here's 30 properties to develop in the next 3 years. How do you attack that? How do you approach it?
It took me a long time to wrap my head around Red Sea Global. And, I think I was trotting along quite happily. And then all of a sudden someone turned the page of a book and it was like, what, there's more? And, we together collaboratively as a team, there's just an energy and a momentum that keeps this going. It's challenging because there's so many different stakeholders over so many different departments. And you can imagine the flow between development, design, asset management, operator, marketing, PR. We're not just opening a hotel, we're launching a brand new destination to a newer region for travel, not just within the Middle East, but globally. And so there are layers and layers and layers. I mean, and to make it all happen within, 5 to 6 years, it takes a lot of just structure, collaboration. And, I think what I was most impressed with when I joined Red Sea Global was the caliber of talent that sits around the table. The thinking minds, the quality of the architects that we're working with. Our partners are bringing the best of the best to the table, and that's our expectation. We need that. Saudi Arabia, even a couple of years ago, was not on the tourism map. People don't think
Saudi is not at all.
That first of all, that I want to travel to, but also that I can travel to with ease. And so there are multiple layers of challenges that come up. It's not just about building a destination and master planning it and opening it. It's shifting a perspective that's been ingrained for a very long time. And I find, I've been in the kingdom for almost 2 years now. And to my, let's say, delight and surprise, I'm still learning so much. And it's just unfolding. It's like the storytelling of the rich heritage and culture. And there's such a high population of Saudi nationals here. There's almost 29 million Saudi nationals. And there's a large percentage, there's 60% of those Saudis that are under the age of 30.
Right, they're very young. I remember
And so you
that.
have this really young, ambitious group. You have a government that backs them, that wants to empower them, that wants them in the workforce, that wants to give them opportunity. And so, there's a force behind Saudi Arabia in terms of energy. But we also recognize that it's going to take time. It's going to take time to get that word out, and to show people what Saudi can do.
Well, I mean, when I think back on the inception of the projects, opening in northwest Saudi Arabia on the Red Sea, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing there, no infrastructure, no airport, no, so how do you begin? Like, I guess the airport has to be one of the first things. They have to start flying people in, finding staff, bringing in materials. I mean, what have you seen from that process that was really surprising to you?
I think the development framework, is steering the strategy, right? So at Red Sea Global, we don't just invest in luxury hospitality, we invest in infrastructures, education, hospitals, transportation, mobility in general, whether that's airway and bringing in airplanes from different locations, if that's our electrical fleets that go within our destinations, our seaplanes, layer in our foundation of sustainability. We build to LEED Platinum. And so there's very, very high
Oh,
expectations and huge
mhm.
investments. So far, hotels we've built, we've received 80% and over for every building, which means that,
That's excellent.
and not too many developers in the world can afford to invest in that. And so I think that shows our commitment to sustainability. We also have solar farms which fuel all of our destinations. And once the complete destinations are open, we will not only be carbon neutral, but we'll have a 30% carbon positive from the destination. So we have almost 800,000 solar panels that would have been built long before that we arrived. When you're flying into the destination, you actually look out the window and you can see them. We have our mangrove and our coral regeneration project. So there's these layers of, as a developer, how we build and how we build with responsibility. And we typically we're only building in what our output can be in terms of energy and solar. So we have water budgets, we have energy budgets, and that really forces our operators also to operate within those frameworks. So we have a very diverse development strategy, and that covers all areas of residential, luxury hospitality, hospitals, education, infrastructure, transport, all of those kind of things. So it's I can't actually tell you how it all works together because there are so many people doing so many things. But somehow John has successfully, with the help of his executives, been able to achieve that and move things forward successfulully within Saudi. We are one of the tourism destinations, other than Alula, that is up. It's running, it's welcoming guests, and it's already making money.
Already making money, the key word. Um, yeah, it's just amazing to think about all those layers, as you say, starting from nothing and creating a city. And it's great that you get to be in the front row seat for that. Wonderful to hear about the LEED Platinum. How else will wellness be factor in these properties? How is it woven into what you're doing?
You know what? Often people ask me that question, and we don't have to insert wellness. Wellness is naturally there. If you look at the sustainability frameworks, if you look at even the sustainability standards, the integration of people and planet and the parallels that come from that, that isn't something that we need to inject. It's there. And so it's a foundation. It's in our DNA. It directs and steers everything that we do and everything that we represent as a company. And so people implant it to us. It's not just a narrative. It's something that we live and breathe. It's the way that our staff villages are made. It's the way that our staff are taken care of within those staff villages. I mean, the staff live on the same beach shores that the guests do, because that was a commitment from Red Sea Global, that we wanted them to have the highest quality of life, to be here, to be able to attract the greatest talent. And so to us, wellness is already integrated there. But if we start to look at, let's take Amala as an example, because Amala is going to open by the end of this year. The vision from MBS was to be the most comprehensive health and wellness destination in the world. And so that is how we started steering our master planning, is what does it take to be, like, what does that even mean? What does it take to be the most comprehensive health and wellness? Well, for us, it means, location in the world. So we are a coastal destination. We're 500 meters from the sea. We're 500 meters from the mountains. There's an incredible amount of outdoor activities, both in the water, above the water, on land. We have layers of, let's call it enrichment. We have our coral regeneration and our Marine Life Institute. We have our equestrian. We have our farm and our farm to table approach. We have a 12-kilometer linear park that has so many different activation spaces for wellness. It's just naturally built. There's fitness areas, there's contemplation areas, there's running tracks, there's horseback riding. You name it, this trail has it. We can host major events on it. We have hiking trails in the MBS Reserve, which is directly behind the hotels. We have 12 dedicated health and wellness operators. And whilst some of those sit within the luxury hospitality space, as an example, if someone's bringing a Four Seasons or a Rosewood, they're bringing their top wellness offer. And so what we need from our operators and what we're working with them on is how do we translate the Saudi wellness story? Because with so many Saudis here, it's fundamentally important that the Saudi story stays here, that we don't get beyond ourselves like other GCC countries where it's just an international mishmash of culture, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but
You can be
Saudis,
anywhere, you want it to be rooted in the local traditions. Very good.
you do. And the more time I spend here and the more time I'm exposed to the storytelling, I realize that there is a really deep, rich, beautiful, cultural story here. And so, it's probably, to that point, one of the biggest challenges is getting people on board. We have a lot of people sitting in America or in Europe or in Asia who are looking after these brands and thinking, Saudi, what Saudi? It didn't used to be on the map. And they see it on a piece of paper and they hear that there's a hotel opening there, but there's this, this lack of engagement to want to know more. And it almost feels a bit addictive for me here. And, I tend to get quite emotional about it because, I'm constantly learning about the Saudi wellness traditions and how it's represented here. And there's such a beautiful, interesting story to tell here. The parallels of reflection and meditation and prayer, the sounds that come from the mosques in terms of energy and vibration, the cleansing rituals of hammam, and the natural kind of conservation efforts, but also the conservation of plants and native herbs, and how Saudis use that within their own well-being. The pilgrimage in itself, if we compare that to any type of Asian philosophies or religions, there are so many parallels, and these stories are here and they're here to be told. And so we are, the Saudis are the keepers of those stories, but as operators and visitors to the land, we are the people who help deliver that. And you always want to feel, you go to Bali because you want to feel the Indonesian culture and you want to feel the spirituality and you want that rooted experience. You go to China because you want to really immerse yourself in Chinese medicine. And, if we're talking wellness, you want to immerse yourself in the food and where it comes from and how it's made. And so that's still, that is what we want from Saudi, so that we can put the Saudiness, as we would say, in that culture and that rich heritage into the guest experience. Because if we look at different um, wellness destinations around the world, we just talked about Bali, we talk about Turkey and hammam. We might talk about any of the Nordic countries and their approach to health and well-being. We talk about Costa Rica and sustainability and the different frameworks. And so if we look at those places around the world, what makes them really unique? What makes them special? What makes them, uh, you know, not just a destination to travel to, but something where they feel that they can connect? I know, one of my favorite places is Ubud in Bali, and I keep traveling back because of that feeling. But a lot of that is cultural, like there is
Yes.
this integration of international, uh, visitors there. But it's the culture. It's the Bali smile in the morning. It's the motorbikes, buzzing in my ear. It's the
The
food. It's
monkeys.
the landscape. Yeah, it's everything. And so, our biggest challenge is how do we get those operators who are sitting in distant countries to spend more time here, to really, really understand this rich, this rich heritage and to help us tell the story,
Oh,
So
you're an excellent storyteller because listening to you talk about it makes you want to go. I felt the same when I started going. It's like, oh, there's more here. There's more to it, and they are very serious about their rituals and their customs and their culture, and they live it every day in a very authentic way. So I really love that. And they are very friendly. They're very hospitable people. I mean, I
there is
remember
a
the fir-
kindness and generosity in this culture that I've been delightfully surprised, and that, I slap myself on the wrist every time that I have that surprise, because I think, it teaches you a lesson each time not to make, judgment on on different countries or cultures or what we think we know, because actually we don't.
you
And there's
only
just
see the surface. We only see the marketing bit,
the
not the real.
media, the media, and we all know that is not a trusted source today. There's always something behind that. So, yeah, it's been a really, I can honestly say it's been a deeply enriching experience to be here and to be part of this vision. And I think what is also really unique is that no matter which conference you go to, there is this anchor of Vision 2030. Everyone knows about it and everyone is working towards it. And that is what makes everything have momentum here and move forward.
Well, you've been great about sharing your story at those conferences too, so people can understand, but you don't really get it until you go. As you say, you arrive there. You mentioned Alulia, and I got to go there last year. And I don't know why I even went. I think I saw a picture and I thought, well, that looks neat. I'll go there. And I flew there by myself. I rented a car. I had to find a place to stay because the two big resorts were full. There's a banyan tree and a habitas. And I visited both, but I couldn't stay there. And finding a place to stay on booking.com where I was like messaging with someone in Arabic and they would message me back and they left me the code for the door on. And you're driving a car where there's no signs in English. Thank goodness for Google Maps. But so it was a bit more of an adventure than I expected. But that's a good thing. That's what I love about travel. And there are not many places in the world now, as you know, that you can go and you sort of have to have your wits about you and be a little bit more intrepid. It's not all laid out. And one thing I remember is that I couldn't get food. Like there was nowhere to just go and get a meal. So I went to the properties. They were touring me and hosting me, and ate everything I could while I was there because it was hard to figure out how to get food outside of that. But I'm sure by now it's probably already even better.
Yeah,
It's just really interesting to go at the inception of something and see how it unfolds. And the
yeah,
properties were amazing. I mean, wow, just stunning, both of them.
yeah. I
Were
stayed
you?
at our Habitas this year in March, and we also visited the old town. It was during Ramadan, so there was most things were closed during the day, but we did venture out. We did the UNESCO heritage sites, and we did the old town, and that came to life in the evenings.
Mhm.
But I loved the way that that Alula was very true to, its anchor, which was how can we use art to tell the story in these vast landscapes. And when you look at their future strategies and how they're applying that, and the different artists that they have curated to be able to facilitate that, it's incredible. James Turrell, Light in the Desert. I mean, it's exceptional, really high quality, but they're also experiential tourism experiences where people will travel there for those travel experiences. It's not one thing. It's the destination, and I think that's what they've done really successfully at Alula. And actually, I came back from Alula thinking, where else can I travel in Saudi? Like, it gave me the travel buzz in Saudi, and what's interesting about that is everything right now for the next 5 to 6 years is in development. Even if you and I were exchanging on the metro, and I'm looking out the window and thinking, gosh, there's a lot to do before the expo in 2030. But I felt the same way when I lived in Dubai. You think, God, like, how are we going to get there? But I think there's trust in that process, and there's trust because I lived in Dubai and I watched, Dubai grow. When I arrived in Dubai, the Burj Khalifa was not even coming out of the ground. And
Really?
yet
Well,
2 years, poof, it was finished. And I was living right next to it. So, you see it now and it almost looks blurry, and people ask you about it, and it's difficult to describe, and it's difficult to really embrace it when you're just looking at a piece of paper. Like, here's our destination, and this is a rendering, and you know what I mean? Like, it's not tangible.
right.
And so our biggest impact is when we invite people to the site, and that's when it finally drops. That's when they're like, wow, this is huge. Wow, this is all happening. We have almost 22,000 people on our Amala construction site every day.
22,000. Wow. But
I mean,
there's a lot of wows in this conversation, but that's just tremendous.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
So,
I spoke to someone last week who was on one of those trips, someone up from the vendor side. And, as you say, when they get there, they're like, oh, now I get it. It's unbelievable. You just can't wrap your head around the scale of it. Let's talk a little bit about some of the logistics, Lindsay, of like staff. Where will you get staff to work and how will that happen?
well, lucky enough, that's the operator's job. But we are there to help facilitate that, and to make it easier for them as well. And so within Saudi Arabia, within our regenerative responsibilities, we have a Saudiization across Saudi Arabia where we should look to hire 40% Saudis, a certain amount of females in the workforce. So there's definitely, this women's empowerment here, and the young girls are so excited to work. They're so excited to get out of the house, to have responsibility, to have money, to buy their own things, and to travel. And so we've done collaborations last year with the Battersea Medical College in Jeddah, and we worked with them to help create a wellness tourism framework where it was a 2-year course. It was a fairly generalist program, but what it did is it first of all helped teach them English, which was fundamental to the hospitality industry, but it also helped them with their understanding, even at a general level, of what wellness meant and how to talk wellness and how
Sure.
the different facets of wellness, and so we will have 180 graduates from that program by the end of this year, which we
Tremendous.
committed to hiring within our properties. And so that's one step forward. We were also looking at some initiatives to build a therapist school here. Unfortunately, that's fallen through just in terms of asset availability. But we also have within Red Sea Global, we have partnerships with hospitality schools. We had over 150 elite graduates. So those are our graduates that came from university programs, whether it was within Saudi or abroad, and they went through our elite graduation program, and then they've been dispersed within our properties or within corporate office. and this is just exceptional talent. So there's been a lot of initiatives. If you focus also on our staff villages, I touched on that initially. Um, there was always a desire to attract and retain talent. That was the strategy. To this day, it's still the strategy. When we take people to the staff accommodations, they're like, "What? Really?" Like, there's beach clubs. There are gyms. I mean, and the gyms are at the same level that you would expect at any of our hotels. Um,
Nice.
the staff are literally, on the beach. They're all walkable villages. They're very generous in terms of spacing. And if any of the colleagues are sharing, it's very generous. There's restaurants and cricket fields and like you name it, we've done it. And I think being in the Middle East, that can actually, a lot of staff villages can be frowned upon, but this is something that we really want to speak about. And so that has been, definitely a contender for us and will be. I think Dubai and other neighboring, GCC countries are going to lose a lot of people to Saudi because they have put such an emphasis on this. Um, and the fact that they can come over to this country and live such a great lifestyle is a real big plus. So we work with the operators. It's one of the reasons too that we go to industry events just to talk to people about Saudi, to kind of talk through the misconceptions that people have, to let them see what we're doing here, and to share that with people. And I think anyone within the spa and wellness industry, Amala is the place to be.
Oh,
It's where you can evolve from being in luxury hospitality spas with a general manager that may not be interested in what you're doing to a destination that is built to succeed in health and wellness.
yes. And who
So
wouldn't want that? I mean, that's appealing to everybody.
yeah.
How about the
So there's a lot
guests?
of different initiatives. I'm not suggesting that it's going to be easy, Lisa. I think we know it's going to be difficult to change that international mindset of moving to Saudi. And we're realistic that it's going to take time, but I think in the end we're going to get there, and we're going to create something that's very unique to other wellness tourism destinations around the world.
Talk about the guests. I mean, you've got Alula open, so you have 5 properties open at Amala, correct? So where are the guests coming from so far, and where do you project them to come as the project grows in scale?
That's a great question. And there's so many great answers for that. I think initially we will, and we are seeing an influx in GCC. So when I say GCC, the Gulf Coast countries, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, we're seeing a lot of people come from there. And I think important to note that because these are new destinations, the airway coming in and out is really fundamental. So where are the big hubs? Well, Dubai is a big hub, Qatar is a big hub, and Istanbul is actually a really strategic hub for us because in comparison to Dubai, Riyadh even in itself is a 5 hour plane ride to Rome. It's so easy. Once you're up in the air, it's 4 hours and 30 minutes. And so I think that those major hub cities and the distance that we are is probably going to attract a lot of Europeans, a lot of GCC in general, um, and probably also a lot of like Indian and Chinese because it's so easy to access and it's very quick. Um, so I think that's what we're going to see. We also, these resorts were built for not only Saudi nationals, but they were also built for an international traveler. And so I think we're gonna get a balance of that. Saudis aren't used to traveling within their own country. There hasn't been a tourism market for them in the
Right.
past. So even now, we have a vacation, a Eid coming up, and a lot of Saudis, they want to stay and they want to travel to the Red Sea. And so now this is now an option for them. Before it wasn't. So I think it even takes time internally within the country to understand that things are open, that you have these flying routes that they can travel to these resorts. So it's a process.
Speaking of the flying routes, I mean, the airports are unparalleled. Of course, Dubai and Doha are tremendous. I flew home through Doha and I went swimming at the airport. I took a swim. Yeah, like and a beautiful pool, and I was the only person there, and I'm looking down on the departure gates. It's like, where am I? And Jeddah has a new airport, Riyadh has a new airport. They're built to handle many, many thousands and millions of people. So they're clearly expecting the world to come. And I think you're right. Europe is not that far. Um, and it's fun to kind of find a new place to go that's not a journey halfway around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it just makes travel very accessible for people, and having those close destinations. We're 2 hours closer than Dubai, so
Oh, sure.
when Saudi Arabia can develop to the tourism extent that Dubai has, if you have to choose to go to Dubai or to Riyadh, that will become a competitive market because of the distance and just really the way that the destinations have been curated.
Well, Lindsay, you've spent 2 years in Riyadh now. I mean, what have been some of the challenges you faced? I'm sure there have been some. Of course, culturally, we know there's no wine after dinner, right? So, the heat, like, has it been an adjustment, or has it really just fallen into place for you?
I feel very content in Riyadh. It's one of these places. It's almost the way I felt when I landed in Dubai, except when Dubai, it was a major culture shock for me. I'd moved from Bermuda. I'd been living on an island for 6 years, and I went to the desert, and I was like, where's my green lush
Yeah.
plants, and where's my frangipani trees? And the expat community in Bermuda was really handed to you on a silver platter. Whereas I got to Dubai, and it was like, oof, where do I start? And so it was easier for me to land in Saudi because I had an understanding of the Arabic culture. Um, yes, the weather is challenging, but I grew up in Canada, so the weather is equally as challenging in the winter.
Oh,
So it's whether you're dealing with rain in the UK or sun and heat here or snow in the winter. Um, yeah, I just I feel really content here because I'm so immersed in what the country's doing. I genuinely believe in it, and I'm genuinely enjoying my engagement with the culture. When I lived in Dubai, I felt really far from the Emirati culture. It was really great to visit all of the resorts and to experience, these lavish Jumeirah resorts, but you never really left feeling like there was an imprint on the soul, I guess.
mm.
And you feel that here. You feel the generosity. The Saudi hafawa is what they call it. It's the generosity. It's the welcoming. Um, and so between learning about a really beautiful, rich culture and this beautiful history and an interesting history, it hasn't always been easy for them, right? But to learn about that is incredible. And then you link in the projects that we're working on. It becomes a very meaningful role here. You're not just building this destination, building the future of a country. And so I think that's why, I love my South of France life. I love, the freedoms that are there and walking outside in the sunshine 325 days a year. And, I loved the outdoors, and Riyadh's very different from that I guess, lifestyle. But I also see that it's developing and growing, and I'm so fulfilled by other elements of my life that it all just comes together.
Great, that's great to hear. So, lastly, let's talk about wellness itself and how it's evolving and how that's going to manifest in these new properties. We're both from spa backgrounds, and it was facials and massages and body treatments, and now it's so much broader. Um, what do you see going into these resorts that the operators are looking to do? Anything new or unique? Do you think the Saudis are ready for that? Do you think the visitors are ready for that? Give us a few minutes on what you see as that evolution.
Look, the Saudis are an international mindset. Another misconception is that they don't travel, that they're not educated.
They
It's far from
do.
the truth.
Yeah.
It's far from the truth. They do travel. They are savvy. They understand the luxury market. Most of the business that probably comes from our friends in Switzerland are Saudis.
Mm.
So they are very savvy. I think they're incredibly excited about having Amala as a destination because now they don't have to, they can travel within their own country for wellness. What's been really interesting, I guess, from my role is I have a helicopter view of, under the Red Sea Global umbrella. At the moment, we have 6 dedicated health and wellness brands. So when I say dedicated, I mean they're not legacy hospitality brands. They are brands that are anchored in wellness and health programs. And we have another 3 in the pipeline, and hopefully one day we'll have the tools to develop our own. And so we have been able to very strategically almost be the puppet master of understanding the role that each of these potential operators, so this is before we sign them, how each of them play a role. And we have something called the Circle of Wellness at Amala. And every time we show it to people, I get an email after saying, show us this, like send me the picture of the Circle of Wellness. And what it does is it doesn't say the entire Circle of Wellness in the world, but it shows our Circle of Wellness and our services and treatments that are available at Amala. And so when we look at I say 12 brands because in phase 1 and phase 2, we will have 12. Each one of them plays a very distinct role, just like the GigaProjects. And so Clinic La Prairie is our longevity partner. And we've seen that, an increased shift into precision diagnostics, precision medicine, functional medicine, advanced aesthetics, and how that's grown. And Clinic La Prairie, that's their space. That's what they own. And we want to give them that space to thrive. We have Jayasun, which is a new brand. And we have 2 individual resorts. One is a family only, one is an adult only. And that family resort is so purpose built for families and health and well-being. It's this beautiful integration of holistic therapies from Asia. And they're very eager to integrate the Saudi within that as well, the Islamic medicine. But then it's also got this infusion of technology. And so it's this perfect match of technology meets holistic medicine. We have Equinox, which is an incredible partner from the States, obviously high performance lifestyle, high performance fitness, high performance sport. And the team there, I really admire their approach because it's not your typical physical, emotional, spiritual, mind, body, soul. There's a different tonality to their brand. There's a different DNA. And there's, quite frankly, just a different approach. It's very progressive. And so they bring something really unique to the table. We have Rosewood, who's bringing a flagship Asaya. And so working together with the Rosewood team to identify what does that mean to Amala and how, what role do they have to play is very unique. We are signing a pure Ayurveda brand. So that plays a role. So what we're seeing is that the wellness traveler, it's just not straightforward. The wellness traveler is not looking for one thing. We look at wellness generationally. What do you want? What do the 23-year-olds want? What do the 80-year-olds want? Wellness isn't a one-size-fits-all. And certainly there are different generations, demographics, preferences from all over the world. It's such an individual experience. And what we've done really well is identify those needs of a wellness traveler and then partnered with operators who can help us get there from a vision perspective. So we become the puppet master of the destination and we work. And, so many times we're applauded by the operators saying, wow, this is a really great helicopter view. This helps us differentiate. This helps us maybe focus on women's health, or maybe another group is focusing on oncology treatments, or another one is focusing on longevity or Ayurveda. And so there's this, we don't have 12 hotels with the same offer and it just becomes a destination. So that has been really fundamental to the process of developing this destination.
I would say this job didn't exist before. There's no, protocol to follow for it. And it's so high level. I mean, what skills have you needed to draw on to be able to stand back so high level at a development level and help guide this with a sure hand?
Yeah, I felt really grateful when I got the job with Red Sea Global because it showed me that a developer was ready to invest in wellness seriously, and I think that's a unique proposition. What have I learned? I mean, it is still difficult to convince people of wellness. Everybody has their own, it's so ambiguous that like everybody has their own version of what wellness should be. So I still find myself, um, I guess, sharing with people or reintroducing them what is the role of wellness, how can wellness be profitable, even though that's one of our key propositions. But I think we've just learned to be very unique and different in our approach, to think outside the box. I sit on the development team at the moment, and I support our strategy from an initial master planning perspective, from an operator perspective, which brands we bring in, how do those brands show up. And then we get into the design phase. So I support our teams. How do we design the spas? We don't want, 30 spas that all look the same. And so we work with the operators to shape that. And it's something that not a lot of brands do initially. And I think a lot of our operators have been quite taken by our process because it's not something typically by the time the operator gets to the property, it's usually already built, or there's minor changes because it's been acquired at such a late stage. It's not very often that you have a kind of clean slate to work with.
Okay.
And so we get them to go back, and we don't start with it. I don't start with a design strategy. Typically, an architect will start with an area program and they will start with a design strategy. Where we start at Red Sea Global and the process that I've implemented, and it's been incredibly strong, is the commercialization strategy. Let's understand what is the offer, how will it differentiate, what role does it have to play, and how am I going to commercialize that? And a lot of people can't wrap their head around, why do we need to do that today? And we think, well, what we build and what we invest in and what we future proof is really, we need to be thinking about that throughout the entire process. We can't just be starting at an area program. I need 1,000 square meters. We need to be thinking about what is the strategy, what is the role, and then how do we future proof that? So we even have a property right now. We're working with one of the luxury hospitality brands, and it's 3 or 4 years out. So we've looked at this and said, let's start at your strategy. Let's understand that, and tell me throughout that strategy, how have you future proofed? Wellness is going to evolve. It's going to change over the next few years. What are you doing to future-proof that so that we don't get to year 3 and they're like, well, wellness has changed and now we need to put in a cryo chamber, because everybody wants a hyperbaric, a cryo chamber, a red light. The list goes on. Everybody wants the bells and whistles, but how is that going to evolve and change over the next few years? So we really insert that strong strategy commercialization in our initial thinking. And it's challenging to get the operator to think about that so early because it's not in their process. Then we design it. And then, my role also sits with asset management. So once we've developed, designed, and now we're in handover period, I work with the operators to help. Well, essentially, I represent the owner, right? And I represent our risk and ensure that our strategy is implemented across the different destinations, and make sure that we get the most out of our operators. So the operators need to come back and validate those strategies. And, if you want this piece of equipment, show me and tell me how you're going to commercialize that. Like if I'm going to invest in this, bring me through that process of how I'm going to see a return on investment. And, that's obviously a challenging role in itself. But, it's a collaborative role. And I think it's an equal learning opportunity.
Well, it seems like a much more sensible way to approach it, frankly, than just building a spa. We have X treatment rooms, a lounge, men's and ladies' locker rooms done. Um, thinking about the future and how it will make money.
Mhm.
Are you doing, I'm assuming all properties are doing separate men's and women's facilities throughout?
Yes. Yes. So, well, we have a dedicated male, so it's gender segregated. So we have female areas and we have male areas, but you see that typically in the Middle East anyway.
Yeah,
So
right.
for me, they've been built for an international audience with gender segregation sensitivities. Absolutely. We're starting to see things within Saudi Arabia, as an example, yoga classes and fitness classes where males and females are doing that together. We have marathons where people are mixing. So that almost feels like old news now because there has been an integration, but there still is a desire from from different travelers that would like to have more of a private space. And so we've also made sure that we allocate to support those desires as well.
Well, it's fascinating, Lindsay, what you're doing. I mean, they couldn't have chosen someone better with your perspective and your years in the industry to guide this. And we're all excited to see how it evolves. I'm sure everyone listening who's a wellness professional is going to end up at Amala at some point in the near future. So thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Lindsay Madden-Nadeau, Senior Wellness Director of Strategy for Red Sea Global. Busy in Riyadh as always.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa, for helping us to tell the story. I really appreciate your time.
You too. Thanks again.